particularly if you shared the pressures that the court was feeling, and if you think partisanship played any role in that decision.
Well, you asked a lot of questions there. That was a decision that is discussed still today. It created big media furor, to say the least. In fact, while the court was, during the couple of weeks the court had those cases before it, I don't know if you've ever seen cameras that are held up by a tall, what do you call it, big arm that's the height of the building, and it extends out, and they would bring their cameras from the street as close as to the window of a justice in the court building in hopes of catching them at work or something. I don't know, it was just terrible. Now, the issue boiled down to who was going to have the popular vote for President of the United States. And actually, under our Constitution, we don't count the popular vote in selecting a president. Did you know that? We don't do that. Because when the Constitution was written, we didn't have telephones or computers and wireless service or anything else. We had very slow horseback delivered U.S. mail. And so you didn't know for a very long time how the popular vote would be in a given election. And for that reason, the framers of the Constitution created an electoral college system. And when people go to the polls to vote in a presidential election, they don't vote for the president. They vote for some local electors who are pledged in turn to cast their votes for this candidate or that. And people vote for the electors, not the president. So it's a weird system. And we could certainly change it now, but I think it's not too likely that we'll get the change. I think the small states would not appreciate the change. Anyway, during the Bush-Gore case, the problem developed in that the vote, the popular vote for electors was very, very close in many states. And it boiled down to Florida at the end of the day. The other votes were counted, and states were categorized as being for this candidate or that. And Florida was still uncertain, and it boiled down in Florida to the votes in 4 counties. And in those counties, they had used some kind of voting machines where you go in and instead of filling out a box or making a circle or something of the sort, you punch something on a machine, and it's supposed to punch out a ballot, a hole on the ballot. Well, the problem was that some people didn't punch it very hard, or might have intended to punch and then change their minds and punch something else, and we had all kinds of hanging chads, little things that weren't punched out. And so how to count them? And in the United States, elections, even federal elections, are processed by the states, and the states send it down to the counties. And it's volunteer workers in counties who go down to the polls and try to count the ballots. Well, here they had this new kind of balloting on machines, and they didn't have any uniform rules to tell the little poll workers how to count them. Because Florida didn't tell them. Should you count it if the ballot is still hanging on? Or does it have to be a clear punch? What do you do? Florida had no rules. Well, this made it very difficult. And we had the case the first time around and sent it back to Florida. And the Florida and told them it was a federal election and they had to apply some clear rules to govern how you count the ballots. And the Florida Supreme Court did nothing in response. Nothing. So we still had it. So back another case came with similar complaints, and the court took the second one. And we had very little time before January 18th when the new president's supposed to be sworn in. And finally, the court said, well, this system that Florida has is defective because you didn't have clear rules, but we're going to take the count as we see it, and that's the end of it. Goodbye. End of case. And, you know, there's a lot to criticize in that, because in theory, we could have extended the time for selecting a new president, and we could have counted carefully all the ballots under some new rule. But we didn't. The court decided and said, because of the concern that it was stretching out beyond the time when a new president has to be sworn in. And the ballots were all preserved. And the press, different members of the press, conducted 3 or 4 separate recounts of those ballots afterwards. And in no recount would the result have changed. So I stopped worrying about it, and I suggest you can too.